And Evan Wolfson, who is head of Freedom to Marry. Well, you just heard what one of the main opponents to this says, Mr. Wolfson. What's your side of the story here?
Well, I would say that Tony Perkins is really an outlier, and what's to be celebrated here is that the vast majority of Americans have opened their hearts and changed their mind and moved forward to embrace the freedom to marry, and the courts are following where that public opinion has gone. And the reason that's happened is because gay people and non-gay people have talked about shared values of treating others as you'd want to be treated. We've talked about our love, our commitment, real families, not just stereotypes and insinuations. And the American people have moved. And that's to be celebrated, and that's why we feel such hope going into this day in court that we'll be having later this week.
Let me ask you this question. I mean, the polls do show 6 in 10 Americans do favor gay marriage now. But regardless of what you may think of Tony Perkins and his group, there are some very sincere, thoughtful people that are on both sides of this issue. What do you say? What is your message to the 4 in 10 who do not favor gay marriage?
You're absolutely right that not everybody opposed or not with us is somebody like Tony Perkins. You're right that there are people who are still thinking it through, and the good news in America is people do think it through and they do move. And I'm confident that these people will see what the majority of Americans have come to see, which is that when we end discrimination, when we end exclusion, families are helped and no one's hurt. You know, last week the Williams Institute, Bob, released a poll showing that in every single state where we brought the freedom to marry, support has gone up. People, when they get a chance to see it for real and to open their hearts and to talk to their neighbors, understand that civil rights advances like this are good. They're good for the community, they're good for the country, they're good for the Constitution, and they're certainly good for families.
What do you think has been the thing that has caused a lot of people to change their mind on this?
The overwhelming engine of change here has been conversation. It's been gay people talking about love, talking about commitment, talking about why marriage matters, the reality of our lives, talking about how the exclusion and discrimination has really harmed us in tangible and intangible ways. And it's also been non-gay people being willing to be part of those conversations and thinking about shared values. Millions of conversations over many, many battles have led to this momentum. And and the fact that
go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, the fact that we've now seen in the last 2 years more than 60 courts, state and federal courts, Republican judges as well as Democratic, ruling in favor of the freedom to marry is because the courts, like the country, have come to understand that the command of the Constitution does apply to gay people like other Americans.
None of us who have ever had any experience in sitting in a courtroom and watching a trial, or whether it's at the lowest level or at the Supreme Court, knows better than try to guess what the outcome is going to be. But the opinion seems to be that the court is going to rule in your favor on this. But I guess I would ask you this: what happens if they don't?
Yeah. Well, you know, actually 15 years ago today was the day I got to argue in the Supreme Court on the Boy Scout case. And one of the lessons I learned going into the court was count to 5. What it comes down to in the Supreme Court is, will we have 5 justices at least who are ready to rule for us? And of course, we've done everything we can to make the case not only in the court, but in the country, in the court of public opinion, to create the climate for the court to do the right thing. If the court doesn't do the right thing this time, we will keep working. We will build on the progress we've made. We will continue engaging our fellow Americans. We will continue the strategy of winning more states and winning more hearts and minds, and we'll go back before, if necessary, another set of justices. But I'm very, very hopeful that this set of justices will see what all these other judges and what the majority of Americans have seen. It's time to end the freedom to marry, the exclusion from marriage. It's time for the freedom to marry.
All right. Well, Mr. Wolfson, thank you again for joining us, and we'll come back in a minute with our panel of analysts. They have all the answers.